An international working group, including officials from the U.S. and Russia, has agreed to a pause in hostilities in Syria. But while there is no official word from Syrian authorities about whether they will honor the agreement, there is hope this could actually help people living in the war zone. For more on this, we turn to Samuel Rizk. He's the United Nations Development Program Country Director for Syria. We have reached him in Damascus. Mr. Rizk, what do you make of this, this pause, this cessation plan?
Thank you, Suhana. Well, I mean, I think for this country and a lot of the neighboring countries, any movement forward on the political process in the same kind of momentum or with the same kind of momentum that we saw in Munich yesterday is a very welcome development, and this adds to what was happening in Geneva 2 or 3 weeks ago. So in this sense, what's important, I think, about Munich was that it appeared to be quite comprehensive. It was not only about restarting the political process, but figuring out how to seriously engage on a ceasefire, and at the same time, for a lot of people here inside Syria, how to open up more opportunities for access to humanitarian relief, and there are certainly a lot of people that are in need that kind of support. So it's definitely a welcome development. We'll see how it goes because it's been a tough conflict so far, very, very tough and very devastating.
You know, before we start applauding, though, is it kind of like one hand clapping? Because we haven't got anything from the Syrian government saying they're going to honor an agreement. I mean, certainly we heard from the U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, that there is potential here. How do you turn potential into action? What do you do to bring this to the fore for the Syrian authorities?
Well, for us, I mean, we're fully supportive of the work that the Special Envoy of the Secretary General of the UN has been doing, Mr. Stefan de Mistura, and his office here, fully engaged, bringing everyone on board in Geneva. And we hope that that continues to happen, both with government and opposition, because as it turns out, of course, after 5 years of crisis, the 6th year is about to start in a couple of months, a lot of people's lives and livelihoods here have been devastated. So forward movement on everybody's part, I think, is what everyone's looking for.
And as we wait to hear how big that forward movement will be, what will it mean for your teams on the ground who are distributing aid? If this cessation, this pause in hostilities does happen, how does it change your world and those they're trying to help?
Well, I think immediately on the humanitarian side, and as the UN humanitarian needs overview from the last couple of months and our own appeal for humanitarian needs inside Syria, there are a lot of people that need support, whether it's the 13.5 million people in need of humanitarian relief, or the 6.5 million people that have been displaced from their homes, or even on the other side, the lives and livelihoods of people over the last 5 years, the almost complete devastation of development in this country, which is one of the things that appeared, of course, very urgently in yesterday's launch of the Syria Center for Policy Research report. It's almost unimaginable at this point that a country 5 years ago would have met a lot of its Millennium Development Goal targets of ending poverty or child mortality or things of that sort, is now 85%. 85% of the population, 4 out of 5, live in poverty, over 50% of the people unemployed, and over 60% of those live in actual abject poverty where they can't even meet their basic food stuffs. A political solution, an end to the crisis, enables a lot of people in need of humanitarian relief to get it, and enables us to promote what we call the resilience of Syrian people, to be able to stay in this country, not be displaced anymore inside the country or become refugees outside, or have the choice to actually do that, especially when the reason for displacement is about not being able to have a job or not having access to electricity or a school or a health center. So that's what we are looking forward to. We did a lot of this in 2014 and 2015, and we have another couple of years now worth of work to do where we're supporting the resilience of people, getting them to have the choice to stay.
I'm just going to jump in because I'm running out of time, and I do want to get to Canada's role, and I'd like to know what you see Canada's role and how perhaps it could grow when it comes to helping Syrians decide not to flee. And given the circumstances you've outlined, it's certainly easy to understand why people do want to leave. But in building the country back up and having people stay, how can Canada help?
Oh, it's very critical at this point. I mean, what's entirely clear is this renewed Canadian engagement with the UN system just over the last week. Our own director, the administrator of the United Nations Development Program, Helen Clark, visited Mr. Trudeau last week. 1 or 2 days ago, the Secretary General was in Canada visiting the Prime Minister. So we're seeing a lot of re-engagement. What we would like to tell Canadians is the Syrian story is a devastating story. A lot of people need humanitarian relief. A lot of people with some support for a job or for them to get their work or business back up, or to basically clean a school or fix debris or remove rubble or waste, can be able to stay in the country in a dignified way. For those fleeing for insecurity, there's no way anyone can stop that, and it might be okay and best for them to do so. But for those who are leaving their homes because they don't have access to a job, we look forward to Canadian support to this kind of work here in this country, especially because Canada, on the response to the crisis, has definitely been fully engaged as much as it can in neighboring countries. Now we say there's an opportunity inside Syria to do so.
I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Samuel Rizk is with the United Nations Development Program, and we reached him in Damascus.